Right. Thank you for being here. Happy Tuesday. Just a reminder that Lab 2 is due tonight. Um, unless you have significant objections, then come talk to me. Um, yeah, that's the plan. So just submit it to Canvas. So my plan is for today and Thursday, we're gonna get through Unit 3, which is a short unit. I will come around and take those in a moment. So the plan is for today and Thursday to do Unit 3 and Lab 3, hopefully on Thursday. So just get this done because then we're going to get into the bulk of what we want to talk about with Java, which is object-oriented programming. So we've spent a lot of time kind of getting up to speed and doing things in Java to let us actually do more powerful things. So the only kind of step left in how do you do things in Java is input output. With the starting of Unit 3, so input output, we'll look at how do you get information from the command line, how do you get information from files. And so Lab 3 is designed to kind of help you get started with that. And then homework 2 in Canvas, down in we've got a new input output module, and we've got homework 2, which is to make a command line game, which is either, so I can go through this in more detail later, but the idea is you've got two games, one of which is rock, paper, scissors. So you get the information for which move does the user want to choose on the command line, and then some randomness decides who's the winner. And then you've got some options for a harder game. So you've got an easy one, rock, paper, scissors, and then a harder one. The harder one could be like tic-tac-toe or choose your own adventure type story, hangman, or yeah, we did. I remember we did rock, paper, scissors in 102. But yeah, so you've got options. And if you have another idea that you want to try out, I'm happy to talk it through with you and see if it's a good fit. So homework 2 is assigned. That's currently due March 13th, which is next Thursday. So subject to date wibbliness, depending on how fast we go. But hopefully just today and next time. So homework 2, that's ready to go once you have the tools to do so. Okay, so I'm going to take your Unit 2 packets if you've got them, and I'll let you, oops, I forgot to add an outline. I'll let you go ahead and if you want to pull the slide deck up on Canvas while I'm walking. Like not all of them need something. If you want to finish it and get it to me at the end of the time, I'll feel okay.
Yeah, it's fine for myself, but. Like, I mean, I know how to do it. Do I need to? Okay.
Okay. This unit doesn't have a packet because it's little and we're just gonna do things. So let's get going. So we're gonna talk about input output. Here's where an outline would be if I had remembered to make an outline. The basic idea is we're gonna look at how do we do input in Java, and then we're going to play with some exceptions for how do we manage this input. Then we're going to look at reading information from files and writing information to files. That's where we're going to go. Assignments are Lab 3 and Homework 2. Lab 3 is going to be your starting point to help you practice with scanners and a little bit of file reading. And then Homework 2 is hopefully more fun, where you're making some games. So in Python, maybe around your first day or so, you probably learned how to do something with input, right? You type input and you give some sort of prompt in the parentheses, and then you save it to some variable, and now you've got input to work with. It would be great if we could do that as simply in Java, but it's a little bit more complicated than that.
We create a new.
Yeah, I probably will. I'm gonna make a new class. And my package, whoop, I'm in the wrong project. My package will be U3IO, Unit 3 input output, and the date is March 4th. But we can also do that later. So in Java, doing like just getting information from the console or the command line is a little bit more difficult. We're going to use something called a scanner to help us do this. Scanner is a reference type. Now that we know what reference types are, it takes input from somewhere, and then we can use that input in our code. So scanner takes what we call an input stream. So if we type things on the keyboard, so like if we typed 1, 2, 3 space ABC space 1, 2, and then hit enter, then it comes in like this: 1, 2, 3 space ABC space 1, 2, and then there's some new line character, which is input when we hit enter. This is kind of how the scanner is treating things. And so what we can do with the scanner is we can group it. We can group it into like a whole line, which looks from here to the \n new line character. We can group it like that. We can group it by tokens, which could be maybe just each word, or like this set of numbers, now this ABC word. Or we could specifically look for, I want the next integer that the user has given me, which would be 1, 2, 3. So we can grab things from this input stream in a variety of ways. So typically we'll see when we're getting input from the command line, we have some sort of scanner variable, and we get input from system.in. So let's try that out. So I'm going to have a scanner variable, and since it's going to come from system.in, I can call it in, or you could call it s because it's a scanner. It's just a variable name. It can be whatever you want. So I'll call it in new scanner. And in the constructor, I need to say, where am I getting this input? And so I'm getting it from system.in. This is the opposite of wherever, remember whenever we print something, we call system.out. So now and system.out goes to the console. So when we want to get something from the console, we use system.in. Okay, so once I do that, I've got errors. This is a thing where if you hover over it, chances are you need to import scanner from java.util. Once you do that, the errors should go away. So again, you hover over scanner when there's an error and say import from java.util. Does anybody still have errors? Yeah,
On an error basic question,
okay.
is this that we have to import like scanners to get rid of the error? If we were to just like type in import Java until scanner, is that like the same thing? Or
Yeah.
just-
Yeah, so the what's happening is Eclipse is saying, hey, you're trying to use a scanner. I know Java has its own scanner type. So I'm just gonna suggest that one to you. If you already know where it lives, you could type it in yourself, or you could just let Eclipse type it for you. Okay, so we've defined our scanner. The thing that goes in the parentheses here is just the input source. So when we work with like file reading, then the input source is going to be something other than system.in, which is just the console. And so this is how the scanner kind of looks. So it's split up into maybe tokens or entire lines, where if we set up, here's my scanner, and then I type, this is a sentence in the scanner. And then when I call s.next, which just returns the next token, the first token is hello. And so s.next is it's going to take hello, remove it from the scanner, because now we've processed it, and then return it. So this is something that you'll also practice in lab 3 a bunch, where once we call s.next, it grabs the next thing, removes it, and returns it. So let's do something that I believe is the first activity in lab 3, which is we're going to prompt the user. So please give me your name. And then we want to say in .next, and we want to save this as something. So the thing is, when we input something on the console, this also happened for input in Python, where whenever you get something, it's going to be a string. So like everything that you get from the console is a string, and then you'll need to convert it if it's going to be some other data type. But when we just get in .next, then it returns a string. So let's print your name is, and then here's the name. We've got a warning there, but let's see if this works first. Okay, when we do this, now it says, please give me your name. There's nothing else there. And there's a lit up red square, which means our program is still running. So it's waiting for me to give it something. So if I give my name, and now it says your name is Sarah. So it was waiting for me when I said in .next, and then now that I've gotten that information, then it prints the name. I could give it whatever I want here. And what does this give me? It gives me this key smash, but it only gave me up to a space. So that's something interesting to know. What if I tried it with commas? Does it work with commas? Nope. So next just splits according to space. That's something useful to know. All right. Okay, so we did that. So we have some prompt. So unlike Python, when you say input, you can put the prompt in the input. But here we have to prompt separately. And a little bit. It's just different. It's different. So yeah, so we set up the scanner object and then we can say, grab the next thing, grab the next thing, grab the next thing. The thing to know about scanners is what you open, you also must close. And so here, when we said, set up the scanner and take the input from system.in, if this second half of the line works out, then the scanner is open. And so once that's done at the very end, we need to close it. And so that should take away the warning that used to be there that says, let's see what that says. The warning is resource leak. In is never closed. And so if we type in.close, then it closes it. And once we do that, the behavior should be the same. So the same thing happens. It's just now we're better programmers and we've closed what we've opened. And how lists work? Let's discuss that another time. Okay, so in terms of methods, so the dot next just grabs anything until a space. We call that a token. So we're just taking whatever it is and it's saved as a string. There's an option to take the next line of something. So let's So if we prompt to give me a whole line, and then we say in dot next line, you'll see there's two options here, next line and has next line. Let's do next line and then talk about the difference. So I'll say, give me a whole line, and then I'll grab the next line. Then I'll say, here's the line, and I'm going to print what I was given. So I saved it to some string variable, and I'm just going to print that. So same process, just using next line instead of next. Oh. Okay, so what happened here? So I tried to do this. I tried to say in.next and then in.next line. Here's what I think happened. So when I said in.next, I said Sarah, and then I hit enter. And that adds a new line character, which is \n. Remember we talked about new line when we're looking at like printf, where we need to add the new line after we're done printing. So what next does is it only consumes the word Sarah. And it doesn't consume the \n part of it. And so what next line is doing is it's looking for any text until the next new line character. And so here's some text until a new line character. So it takes that. And then it's just like, here you go. So let's try adding in a next line after my next. So what that's going to do is next is going to grab the word Sarah. And then next line is going to take care of that extra new line character. And then that should allow me to do the next line where I actually type something, then it prints it back to me. Aha, it worked. So now it's waiting for my input. There we go. We did it. So what happened here? We needed an extra next line after I called my next in order to make sure that the following thing that I wanted to do is going to work out. Okay. There's also a difference between next line and has next line. I think I'm going to talk about that when we look at files. But the idea is, so there's dot next line. And it's where with a scanner, we're thinking about like consuming it, which removes it from the rest of the pipeline. And so this is what takes it and consumes it. So now we can't access it anymore. But there's also a has next line. So also say that the dot next line returns a string. Has next line just returns a Boolean, true or false. Is there something else later? What's your question?
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to do it here and here? So that's because of the new line character. So once I'm finished typing, I hit enter, right? So if I type my name, then in order to tell it, keep going, go through the rest of the program, I'm done typing. We have to give it some sort of signal. And so the signal could be the enter key. And then that's like, okay, let's move on. And because dot next doesn't consume this character. So this is what even if I just typed the word Sarah and then hit enter, that enter key is the \n there. And so when I want to get the next line after that, I've got to have that in dot next line previously in order to consume this last character. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's confusing. It's confusing. Let me see. There's something else that I wanted to mention. Oh, there may be other end of inputs. Um, sometimes it's like Control C or something. Like the designating I've finished inputting, can vary based on what terminal you're in. So I know like in the Mac terminal, I think it's Control C that stops something from running. In other terminals, it varies. Okay, I'm gonna stop this. Okay, so if we wanted to get like a Boolean, if we had a Boolean after that, you could say we can grab in .next Boolean. I have to give it a name. I'll call it B. Then let's just do the same of print out whatever we got. Full space, that's what it is. And we've got, I'll just print it. So if we do this, and now we're asked to give a Boolean. If I type true, then it's like, okay, here it is. Let's try it again for false. And the Boolean is FALSE. And it prints that no problem. Let's say we forgot how to spell Boolean in Java, and we just give it capital T R U E if we're used to Python. That works too. Okay, good to know.
Something about.
Let's try. Something invalid. Boo. So this is like what's happened here says exception in thread main, and the exception is input mismatch exception, which basically means I was looking for one thing, but I was given something else. And the way to read these error messages is, this is what we call a stack. So it goes to the most recent thing that threw that exception, which is in scanner, which is throw, so that's where it actually gave the exception of, hey, something went wrong, let's report this. And that came from .next, which came from next Boolean, which came from line 27 in my march4.java file. And so if we go to the very bottom, we can see this is where it happened in my code. So line 27, which is right here. And the issue was I was asking for a Boolean, but I wasn't given it. Okay, so that's Boolean. Similarly, I hope that can convince you, you can use like next double or next int. And so I have an example. I have an example for next int that we're gonna do it with what we know right now, and then we're gonna add some other things on and make it better as we go. So let's make a method. So it's going to be public and static. And it's going to be void because I'm working with the terminal, so I don't really want to return anything at the moment. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to get two integers. So I'm going to do this a few times and we're going to make it better as we go along. Okay, so before I do this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take all this code that I wrote in main and I'm gonna stick it in a method. The reason for that is you may encounter this in your homework or other projects, is that when you're working with system.in, if you close it, then it's kind of hard to reopen it. So let's try before I move everything. So I'm gonna have a new scanner. So I set it up and then I say in.close. And what I want to do is, so with the Boolean, we ran into the issue where we just grabbed the next thing, assuming that it was a Boolean. So maybe we want to check whether the thing is a Boolean, in fact. Or in our case, so let's check whether the thing that we're about to get is actually an int. So we can do that with an if statement. We can say if in dot, so if we've got has next line, there's also has next for all the other data types of, is there something of this type after us? So has next int. And that looks at what's next in the scanner and says, is this next token an integer? Yes or no, true or false? So if an integer is next, then we want to say int x equals in dot next int. Then we want to go and grab it. And then since we want to get two ints, we'll have this again. We'll have a for loop, or not a for loop, an if statement, and then we grab it. So first, if we have one int, then we grab it. Then if there's another, then we grab it. And then maybe we could just print them, or maybe we want to do something more interesting. Maybe we print, let's use printf just for fun. So remember %d is what we use for integers, I believe. And so the max of x and y is, and we'll call in math dot max of x and y, or y and x. Right, so we've got a nested if statement. If the first one's an int and the second one's an int, then do the math. I will wait for a moment. Are you ready? We'll add a new line character there. All right, good to go? Okay. So if we get one and the other, now we need to consider a case where we're given something that's not an int. So if one or the other is wrong, then maybe we should have an else. So either it's an int or it's not. And so starting with the inner one, we can say else, and then we can print, instead of to system out, we can print a system error, like that gives us the red text. System dot error. And so here's where we've got different options, like we could also do printf or println. Same as system.out. Or we can say, error, you need two ints. Just a reminder that this is technically legal, where else doesn't have the curly brackets. That's only if else is going to be one line, which in this case it is. So I don't need curly brackets, or if I wanted to be extra careful, you can include them. Okay, so that's the inner one. So now we have to go outside the curly brackets for the else for the other one. And I'm just going to copy and paste that line because I'm going to report the same thing, whether the first int or first thing is an int or the second thing. So copy and paste. Okay, so check if the thing is going to be an int, grab it. Check if the second thing is going to be an int, grab it. Otherwise, report an error. And only if they're both ints do we actually do the math. Sounds good? Okay, so in order to test this, we need to actually call our method. So I'm going to do something that I'm pretty sure is not going to work. Let's see what I call it. Get to ints. I'm going to call it down at the bottom here. And I'm expecting this not to work because once you close system.in, it generally is a headache and creates problems. So if I do this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, wait. That's the other thing. If I give it true, yeah. So this is the thing where it gives me an immediate error because I've closed the system.in. And so when it asks for an integer and there's nothing else there, it's like, you didn't give me an int. Boo. So what I'm gonna do, we could do this a few different ways. I want to keep it as simple for you as possible, so maybe I just commented out what we did before. I'm just gonna set up a multi-line comment with /star, and then down here after in.close, // and that way, once I post this online, you can just delete the multi-line comments and go with that if you want to test the original functionality. So I put all of the code that we just previously wrote into a multi-line comment just so that we can run this. Okay, ready? All right. So let's test the thing that we wrote. Let's test get to ints. Okay, well, first we didn't prompt anything. So it's waiting for something, but I don't know what it's waiting for. So maybe we should add a print statement at the beginning. Please enter to int. Let's try that again. There we go. Now we actually know what we're looking for. So if we enter 2 space 3, then it gives max of 2 and 3 is 3. Great. As expected. What if we did 2 enter, 3 enter? That also works. Good to know. So there. So now we can get our 2 ints. Let's try. If I enter something that's not an int, it gives me an error. Great job. Let's try for the second one. We give it 3, and then something that's not an int, it gives me an error. Hooray. This works, right? We can make it better. We can be better programmers about this. So we need to handle for when things go horribly wrong. We're going to use an object called an exception in order to do that. Exceptions are some object that store information that's associated with a certain type of thing going wrong. So we saw before with input mismatch exception, where we expected to be given a Boolean, but we were given a string. And so we can use those to report something to the user of, hey, something happened. This is the general thing that went wrong, and you can do something about this now. You have to go fix it. An exception that you guys probably saw on lab 2, especially with reallocate, is the null pointer exception, where that's usually what happens when you're trying to access something out of bounds of the array. So that's a kind of exception, null pointer exception. This is used to signal something bad happening. So the thing that I'm about to show you, try catch, it's not for go here when this happens. You should be using like if statements for that. This is for when things go horribly wrong and we need to stop. So the way that we structure this is with something called try catch. So try is where we put, here's some risky code, something that could go wrong. And then after the try block of the risky code has finished, now we catch. And so here we have some exception E, some other exception. So as many things that we think could go wrong, we could probably list them. So this could go wrong, this could also go wrong, and just have as many catch blocks as we need. In there, we can stick our system.error. Yeah, like the error you need 2 ints, we could stick that in there. Do you have a question? So we're gonna see it in action. Okay. We have. Okay, we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna see this in action and then. Okay. Trying to think, do I want to? Do I want to rewrite this or do a completely new function? I think completely new function. That way you have a record of the old one. So I'm gonna call this get 2 ints if else. just rename that. And then I'm gonna make a new function. Okay, so we're gonna have the first two lines where we open the scanner, and then we say, please give me the integers. Right? We want the same functionality, but just doing it as better programmers. And so this time, we're going to use a try catch, where the risky part of this is actually grabbing the next integer. That's the risky part, because if we grab an integer and it's not, then that's bad. So we're going to say, we're going to put this in, we need the word try and then curly brackets. And so the risky code is going here. And the risky code is grabbing int x is in dot next int. And y dot next int. And then I'm just going to copy my print statement because I want to do the same thing. Copy the print statement right there. So if I wanted to, I could still say, I could still check of, is the next thing an integer? Then if not, print error. I could still do that. But here I'm just grabbing it, assuming it's the next integer, but if it's not, it's going to go to catch. So once we do that, this is our risky code. And once we're done with that, we have catch, where in our case, we're going to catch input mismatch exception. Input mismatch exception. And exceptions are objects, they're reference types. So we have to say, we have to, it's an object, and so we have to give it a name, and I'll just call it E for exception. Give it some curly brackets. Currently, it gives me an error saying input mismatch exception cannot be resolved to a type. That's because it lives somewhere in Java. So if I just import it from Java util, then that's fine. And here I can, let's see, does that work? It does. So sys out and works, sys ERR, sys error. Also has the same like control space shortcut. So maybe I'll just print some whimsical error message. Of, whoops, you didn't give me what I wanted. Okay. Once we've got that, so we've got our try, that's our risky code, then we've got catch. Then you'll notice we still need, like, we've still got the warning to close in. And so we have it down here. That's fine. What we can also do is we can put it in a finally block. So the issue with just having it out here is, let's say we open the scanner and then we're like, okay, let's get the next integers. But if something goes wrong, it goes to catch, it prints the error message, then we're done. Which means that we would never get here. So if something goes wrong in try, we go to catch, then we're done. I think. Let's test that out actually. So I've just added a print statement to after the catch to see. Do we get there? So if we just have 2 and 3, max of 2 and 3 is 3. So when it works correctly, we do print test, which means we do close it. But if we give it nothing, oh, I guess it does. So it prints the error message and then continues on. So we could put it like in dot close here. So that's if we just print here's an error. We could also throw new input mismatch exception. That going to, what about just throw E? So the other option is to throw, and I believe throw is actually gonna stop everything. And so that's the thing where if you're trying to access out of bounds for an array, it crashes the program. It doesn't let anything else happen. That's what happens when we throw an exception. And so here is where if we choose to throw the exception instead of just print an error message, it says, here's the input mismatch exception. And then says, here's where it lives. And then it doesn't print test after that. So if we did choose to throw and it depends on what we're trying to do. So if the input that we're getting is critical to proceeding with the program, it's probably a good idea to throw the exception and just stop everything. In which case, we still need to close our resource. So if that's the case, then we need what's called a finally block. And in finally, that's where we typically close the resource and that's it. Or maybe print any final information that you need. So the distinction is system.error. There we go. But if we use throw, it stops the program. So hopefully you see the difference between them. Any questions so far? Okay. So it depends on what you're trying to do. Do you want to just keep on going after this, or do you want to stop everything? And so that's what we're talking about here. So if we need to free resources up, if we're stopping everything, then we need a finally block and to just close the resource that we've opened. Here I have a list of some common exceptions. Index out of bounds, null pointer exceptions, no such element. There's also like file not found, which we'll see. sometimes interrupted exception if we're working on processing something and we like click to end the program, then it'll be like, you interrupted me. Ah, that's an exception. I included this slide because I had it last semester. I never liked this slide. I should take this one out. If I like the middle bullet point though, where if you call a method that could throw an exception, you should probably you should put your risky code in some try catch and make sure to handle that if it happens. Yeah, that's kind of how you can throw an exception. So we've done the first two without try catch and with try catch. Great job, we did it. The other option is I want to restrict it to nothing else on the line because currently, let's look at what we've got right now. We give it 3 and 5, that's fine. If we give it something else, it only takes the 2 ints, but even if there's other data on the line, it just takes it. Maybe we don't want to allow other data being on the line. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make another method and this is gonna assume that, so we're gonna get the 2 next ints and then we're going to, there's a few different ways of doing this. We're gonna restrict it to be like, if there's anything else, then throw it away. Goodbye. So let me rename this one. Try catch, because we introduced try catch with that one. Okay. So I'm going to copy this information. We're opening system.in and we're asking the user for this data. And then okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy the try catch into our new method, and then we're going to play around with it. So just from try up until when I close it outside of the finally, I'm going to copy that. Command C or right click, copy, which for me is Command C. Then I'm going to paste it up here. So it should be like the exact same method as the other one currently is. But the issue is that we want something else here in the printf, or before the printf, because we don't want the risk of any other data being there. So maybe we add if in doesn't have anything next, then we want to print, here's the max, otherwise we will print, there's other data on the line. Not what I have in my notes, so this will be an experiment. So the only thing that I added, I still have the try catch. The only thing I added is this if else. So only if there's nothing else on the line. Remember the exclamation point, that means the logical not operator. So this is saying if in does not have anything next. I'm not 100% sure it's going to work. Let's do a show of hands. Who thinks this is going to work? Okay, at least one vote. Who thinks this is not going to work? No additional votes? Let's see. Okay, it's not working. Try again. What if I put them on separate lines? So I think it's looking for something next and it doesn't know, like, doesn't know when to cut me off. So maybe what we do is, get the whole rest of the line. And if, and then instead of in dot has next of, what do I want to see? If like, maybe we just print this out. S, I don't know what to put here. Maybe S dot length is 0. Like if we take in, here's everything else on the line. And then we'll see, let's see what it is. Okay, so for that, I think it gave me just a space because I added a space after 4. So maybe it's extremely picky. That worked. So if I just hit enter, then it grabs the next line and it printed the next line, which is just an enter, which is why the max showed up later. Will it work if I do just separating them by enter? Yeah. So I think I'm reasonably confident that this does what I want it to do. So let's try having something else on the line, and then it prints there's other things going on here. Because this string is not length 0. So as long as but it's picky because if I give it even a space after it, then it's not happy. Okay, I'll let this sit up here and I'll come help. When you say, wait, the Boolean if it's successful. So I would move that outside to after the final. Oh, oh, that's because you declared B inside the try block. So there's a chance that B was not declared. So you could declare B outside the try, like above. And then inside, so let me show you what that looks like over here. So we declare X and Y over here, but after, if we want to say X, then we get an error saying that X cannot be resolved. That's because we both declare and initialize them here inside the try. So if we want to deal with X or Y after, we have to declare them outside. So it's just a matter of where we declare them. Right, and this is talking about something called scope, where if we declare something in the try block, so you probably have it, if you declared it outside here, but you still have the Boolean, or like if I still had int X here, that it says that's a duplicate.
Oh, okay.
So we only have to declare it once. We can only declare it once. Okay. I want to at least mention there's another something I have in my notes is a method where we get the whole next line and then we have a scanner to go through that line and to get like each next thing in the line. That's also an option. But I feel like that's confusing at the moment. So I'll maybe pause that. Okay, I think we'll look at. So we've gotten the third activity. Yeah, yes. And we've got about half an hour. So let's do some file reading. Yeah, question. Paper, oh, the packet? We don't have one for this one. Sorry, I ran out of time. Okay, so we're gonna look at the file reading, and I'm realizing now that I did not put it on Canvas. So I want to read through the secret garden. So secret garden. So on Project Gutenberg, that's free. I'm looking for the plain text. I'm going to save it here. And I'll upload it to Canvas for you. Secret garden. Okay, now that's a file. And let's go down here and upload it. If you want to choose another favorite book on Project Gutenberg, feel free. I'm just looking for the plain text UTF-8. So if you want to go and download Dracula or Anne of Green Gables or whatever, feel free. So once I've got, so you can go here and download it, and I would like to save it to my Eclipse workspace, which for me, I've got a shortcut there, but just make sure that there's a couple different ways to get there. But I want the code that I write to be able to access this file. So I'm going to store it inside the project. So I'm making a new folder called data. I can do this in Finder in my file explorer. I could also do it in Eclipse. If I click on like the project name and then, nope, I think that's just new folder. So there's different ways I can get here. I can create the folder as I'm downloading it just in my system, or I can create the folder within Eclipse. So I'm going to create it as I'm downloading it, and I'm saving it as Secret Garden. We will, but first I'm focused on getting the data in there. Okay, so there's multiple ways to do this. Another way is once I have like my secretgarden.txt over here, and if I make my data folder within Eclipse, then I can drag and drop and just like put it in there that way. There's multiple ways to download this. But once I've got that, if I refresh, so like right click and then go to refresh, then the secretgarden.txt should show up. Okay, so I've got this set up, so I'm going to go around and make sure that we get there. So it's got the data folder. So now, have you downloaded the Secret Garden?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could probably download it from Canvas directly into that folder.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. You got it? Okay, so click on the product name. And then go to the new. You want it called data. So now you can go to Canvas and download it.
Yeah.
During the section. Yeah. So yeah, so download the Secret Garden. Oh, that just went to your download folder. So let's open it up. And then in Eclipse, do you have a data folder yet? Okay, so click on your project name. And then new folder. And we want to name it. Great. So now we can drag and drop from downloads into data. And copy drop, yeah. And so now I think we can go through that. Right? Great, so can you show it? Now we can use drag and drop. And so then just go out the project. just for fun. And that one, and then so it's like, oh, just some project thing, yeah. Okay, and since the data folder disappeared, then it's inside our file. Got it? Aaron, you get it? So, I saw it in basic, well, the data folder should just be like parallel to the source, the SRC folder. That was sort of, as long as you refresh it and it clicks out. So yeah, so the data folder should be parallel to the source. Yeah, you got that. And so if you like collapse the source folder, then that, if you see both that source and data, then you're good. Okay. Good.
I was trying to import the lab, so I can get back to see the lab, so I'm trying to figure out on my own how to import it.
Okay.
That's hopefully we'll get it.
Sounds good. You're writing your own model? And it's in a data folder? Okay, so let's see, where does this actually start? So we've got like here's the Project Gutenberg disclaimer. We've got, here's the title and other things that this author wrote. We've got the table of contents. And so we end up actually starting at like line 122 or something like that. So I'm going to make it, so this one, March 4th, I think is going to be for like the scanner, like console IO. If you ever are in this position where like, I've got this file named something, but I want it to be named something else. You could go up here and name it something different here. And then since it's got to be the same file name, you can like go to Finder or whatever and rename it there. Or you can use Eclipse. So if I'm going to click on this file name, I can right click on it. And then there's a refactor option. Refactor and then rename. So right click on the file in Package Explorer. So here's my March 4th file, march4th.java. Right click, refactor, rename. If I click that, then it's like, okay, what do you want it to be named? So I'll name it March 4th console IO, because I feel like that's a reasonable description of what we were doing here. And so there's other options if I click next, but I just want to hit finish. That's all I want to do. Once I do this, it says it contains a main method. That's fine. And so now my class is named March 4th console IO, and this is also called console IO. Hooray. So it did that work for me. So I'm going to make a new file that helps us read through the secret garden. So I'm going to make a new class. And I'm going to call it, what do I want to call it? Secret garden file proc for processing. Or maybe just file processing. I don't know. Or SG file processing, up to you. The point is we're processing through a file. That's what we're doing here. And I would like a main method, and I'm going to finish.
Right, we put request in U3IO package.
Yes, it's going in my U3IO package. Because we're still in the input-output unit. Okay, so let's say that I want to, so I'm not gonna work in the main, I'm gonna make different methods because I want to do some different things. And then we'll call them in the main. Question.
I had renamed my March 4th thing, and I was saying I have to rename my variables or something. That was there before anything.
Oh, that's because you're declaring, you have to declare it in only one spot, where you say int x1. So I would, if you've got it up here, I'm doing int front of those. Did you also have an issue?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody else have an issue?
Mine is unrelated.
What is your issue?
In the more Java slide, in the more Java slideshow from last week, there was no slide detailing how to initialize an array.
Initialize an array. That's because initialize or like allocating an array, that was in the first set of slides. The unit 1. I think. Yeah, because we needed to talk about arrays for lab 1. So that went in unit 1. Okay. So we've got maybe 15 minutes left. No lab 3? I'm confused. Yeah, we're not doing lab 3 today. So maybe I want to read 35 or read n lines. And I've got some options here. Let's say I want to read, I'm gonna be given some file name and a number. And so I want to read the first n lines of whatever file name is given to me. Okay, so now that we're set up with the secret garden, we're going to be reading through it. So we're still going to use a scanner because we know how to use a scanner, but we're just taking the input from another source. So we're not going to be typing every line of the secret garden into the console. We've got it all in a file. We just want to read through that file. The way we do that, there's a couple different ways, but the way I'll show you is with file reader. And so instead of giving it system.in, the console to read through, we're going to give it a file reader. And the file reader knows how to read through an object and hand each thing to the scanner. And so file reader itself needs what file are we looking at? Okay, so this is what we're going to try and do. And so this process it's going to look a little bit different from what we were just doing with scanners, just because it's an added step we're doing something a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to need a scanner, and I'm going to call it file in. And the risky part is actually reading from this file. So initially I'm going to set it to null and just be like, I'm going to have a scanner called file in, and it's initially just going to be nothing. I'm going to actually initialize it inside the try block. So I'm going to do it later. And I've got to import scanner again. Okay. Now I need my try block. And here's where I instantiate it. So I don't declare it again. I don't say scanner file in. I just say file in because I've declared it beforehand. File in equals new scanner. Again, nothing new. We've done this before. The only different thing is I'm going to get it from a file reader, and I'm giving it the file name, which is my parameter. So I could hard code this. I could say this lives in data slash the secret garden.txt. But maybe I don't want to assume that it's going to come always from the secret garden. Maybe I'm going to want to read, I've got an activity later for the Magna Carta. So if I want to read the first n lines of another file, then I want to keep it general. And so that's why I've got the file name parameter. We're going to need to import file reader as well. This is something that lives in Java IO. So we're set up now to go through this file. Do you have a question? What is the error?
Syntax error, insert file need to complete try statement.
I've got that too. It's because we have it. So once we have a try, it's like, all right, so what am I going to do if this goes wrong? So we need a catch and then a finally. So let's set that up now. The worst thing that can go wrong with this sort of line is that we didn't find it. So we're like, okay, I want to open this file and read through it. But if I don't find it, that's the issue. So my exception here is file not found exception, all one word in what we call camel case. The camel like capital and then lowercase, capital and then lowercase. And then let's try something different with this one. We can print the stack trace, which is that error information with all the line numbers that we've seen before. So this is just experimenting with different things we can do when we have an error. And then we need a finally after our catch, which here's something like a little bit different. So we have if file in is not null, then close it. So this, since we initialized file in as null, then if it's not null and something went wrong later on, then we just close it. Okay. Are we good? This should have taken care of the error after the try. All right. So let's say we want to count up to line n. So I'm going to use a while loop to go through this. So I'm going to have some sort of counter variable. Maybe we start at 1, maybe we start at 0. Maybe we'll play around with it. So we want to read up to n lines. And so maybe we want to say, well, counts is less than n. Then maybe for this case, we just want to print the lines that we read to the console. Super simple. So we'll just sys out file in dot next line. Is there a problem with this for what we have right now? There's at least 2 problems. What are the problems? Yeah.
Is one that you're not taking them out.
Yeah, I've forgotten to do the incrementation step. So count plus equals 1. If we wanted to skip lines, then we maybe do count plus equals 2 or something. But just going from one line to the next. And what's another possible issue with this? So if we're only reading like 35 lines of the Secret Garden is at least 35 lines. Let's see how many lines it actually is. Almost to, what's that, 9,000? So it's almost to 10,000. What if we gave it, so first let's actually test if it works. So let's run, because we're running out of time today. What did I call this method? Read n lines. Read n lines. And so I'm going to do what should work for Mac, which is I give it the name of the folder and then a slash and then the name of the file, which is secretgarden.txt. The spelling here absolutely 100% matters. So whatever you see over here, and we also need the file extension. So this, and it's currently giving me an error because I didn't give it a second number. If you're on Windows, I think the slash goes the other way, and maybe there's 2 of them. Can someone with Windows? Okay, so first I'm going to try this. And it prints what I assume is the first 35 lines. Can someone with Windows verify whether you need just a forward slash or a backward slash or 2 backward slashes? Great. Sometimes I find that like depending on the kind of Windows, sometimes it works with just a forward slash. So let's try that. So like if I'm on Mac, when I do the backward slash, it doesn't like that. But if I try this again, it doesn't like that. So if you try this, can someone, who got it to work?
I got it to work, but with the 2.
2 backward slashes?
Yeah.
Great. Who did not get it to work? Okay. Did anybody else not get it to work? Okay. Wait, is that it didn't work? Error in the import. Okay, so this is kind of where we'll leave it for today. I'll come around and help in the last few minutes. For active learning, if you would please submit the console IO one, and then we'll continue with the Secret Garden next time. So I'm gonna stop recording and then come around and help.